So, and maybe we can start out with introductions, and we can start with Christy, since she's on mute already.
My bad. Okay, I'm back. Okay. Most of you, everybody but Tiffany, pretty much knows me. I'm your registry committee chair, chaos coordinator. I'm in Arkansas. I only have 2 San Clemente so far. No, 3. I have 3. I have 2 does and a buck, and hopefully we'll get more in the spring. I raised registered alpines for 16 years, and I had goats 2 years before that were Nigerians. And that's pretty much it. I'm here to help with anything registry related.
Thank you. Tiffany, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Tiffany. I live in Maryland. I just rescued 3 San Clemente Island Goats. So I'm just kind of learning about the breed, learning about the conservation of the breed, and I'm just here to learn.
Sounds good. Thank you very much. Erin, would you like to go?
Sure. I'm Erin Link. I live in western Wisconsin. I've been raising San Clemente specifically since 2013. 2009 I got goats for the first time, and been a lot of fluctuation with the herd. I had, over 50, sold a good chunk of them recently, and this focusing on the Tepper line of the San Clemente Island Goat right now.
Thank you. I see Greg has no audio, so if you'd like to chime in a little bit later, we'd definitely welcome him introducing himself. And then I'm Aaron Bai, and Jenny is right behind me. I think now we have 13 San Clemente Island Goats. I say that because I just did almost 30-hour round-trip drive with some fun driving in between this weekend to go pick up 5 more. And those 5 are at a friend's house right now on quarantine, or 4 of those 5 are there. And then the mature buck that we got is in a stall at our house on their quarantine right now. So still trying to get caught up from that. But it's always great to meet other SCI owners person in person. So I got to meet Debbie and Diane both. I met Debbie actually last year in person. So it was good to spend a little bit more time. And when you talk to people face to face, it's a little bit different, and I encourage it. So, and we're up in Minnesota. Forgot to mention that. And Aaron Link lives about an hour away from us. And then Lisa, do you want to introduce yourself and start the presentation?
Sure. I'm Lisa Leonard. I'm out in California. I'm on the board of the San Clemente Island Goat Breeders Association. I've had goats, San Clemente goats, for about 7 years. I herd numbers around 40, including this year's kids. And I am particularly interested in these goats as they evolved and created traits that made them survivable on the island. I use the goats right now for, just conservation, but also some of the wethers for meat. I hope to someday get to milking them, but I just don't have the time to do that because we also manage a farm. And I like every aspect of these crazy, wild, fun-loving little goats. So I was particularly interested in the coloration of the goats, so I spent some time at the board's request trying to do an investigation as to the different color variations and patterns, etc. Interviewed and read everything that Dr. Spanenberg, one of our advisors, has written, talked to him, asked questions of him, tried to really distill down an understanding of San Clemente Island goat color and to some extent general goat color and the genetics behind it. So a lot of what you're going to see today is based on some great information and research that he's done and other people have done, like there's some people in the Nigerian world who have done a lot of good research and documentation of what goes on with goat color. So leans heavily upon those folks, and we appreciate their being willing to share it with our organization. So what I'm going to present today is kind of a basic overview, first of just goat color in general and some of the genes involved. I'm going to focus on genes that are of importance to San Clemente Island goats. There's a lot of other genes that our goats don't seem to have or doesn't seem to influence the color of our goats. But I'm going to just focus on the ones that do affect our goats. So let me, hopefully, can everybody see the SCI Happy Hour screen here?
Yes.
Okay. So let's go over a couple of terms, because I'm going to use some terms, and if you are of my age, some of these terms differ from what you learned in your high school biology, right? So as we kind of all knew back then, we have like sets of chromosomes. There's a term called the locus, which is the location of a particular gene on the chromosome. So you can have the agouti locus, you can have the brown locus, you can have the spotting locus. That's where your pairs of genes would occur on the chromosome. And then the alleles are the individual genes. This is the data or the programming that influences the expression of a chromosome. So the alleles, there's 2 of them on each genetic location, and they're the specific programming for, in this case, our goat's color. So you're going to hear me say locus, which is the set of chromosomes, and alleles, which is the individual pieces of the chromosomes. Then also I will probably talk about dorsal stripes and martingales. Those are illustrated here. I'll talk about the cape on the San Clemente Island goat and the chevron, which is here by the stifle. I don't know if those are common ways people describe their goats, but just in case, I wanted everybody to understand what I was talking about. Okay, so let's talk about goat in general, goat hair pigment and the colors of goats. So with goat hair, there's 2 pigments involved, the eumelanin and the pheomelanin pigments. The eumelanin is going to give you a black or brown color on the hair. If the pheomelanin is turned on, it's going to be a range of tan pigments. Those are your base pigments in a goat. How those appear on which parts of the body of your goat is the distribution or the pattern, and that's controlled by the agouti locus. And then there's modifiers on these pigments, specifically ones that affect San Clemente Island goats are dilution and spotting. Now, if we were talking about all goats in general, there's probably about 10 other factors involved, but we've got a much simplified set of genes affecting the color of our goats. So let's talk about the eumelanin locus. This is sometimes called the brown locus, even though it affects black or brown pigment. Hold on just a second. Sorry, I had to send background noise away. So the eumelanin affects, it's going to give you black or brown pigment in the goat, okay? It's always one or the other. It's not mixed, it's not blended or anything like that. And there's 4 types of colors or genes involved. So the most dominant gene is what they call the dark brown, or the BD. It's the most dominant. This is a dark brown color on the animal. The next most dominant is the light brown. This is the color that you see in Toggenburg goats. The third one is an actual black goat. This is the wild allele. So if you had, let's say you had a goat and one of its alleles was dark brown and one of it was black, the goat's going to be dark brown because the dark brown is dominant. Same thing, if you had a goat that had one light brown allele and one black allele, then the goat's going to be light brown because the light brown is dominant. But if it's black and black, or the next gene down, then your goat's going to be black in its underlying base color. So the final one is the recessive, which is the very round medium brown, liver colored. And for a goat to be this color, it has to be medium brown and medium brown at the allele, so BB and BB. It has to be the recessive. Anything else, it's going to be the color of the gene above it. So based on what we know about San Clemente Island goats, visual history, looking at a lot of different documents and pictures, we don't believe that the light brown or the medium brown exist in our goats. The gene just isn't there. We know that the black is there. We might think the dark brown is there, but we're not quite sure. And this will be easier to understand a few slides in, but we're not sure if the dark brown exists in these goats, because the eumelanin pigment is what shows up in our cape, our chevron, all of the dark areas of our goat. And we know we've seen black, and sometimes you see black and it's a little sunburn or it looks a little lighter, but we're not quite sure if it's dark brown or just black that's sunburned. That's where the question comes in. So if dark brown existed, you would see something that's more of a dark brown pigment in the patterned area of our goats. Like this little goat here has definitely a brown pattern on it. So let's talk about pheomelanin pigment. This is your tan pigment, and it is associated with some level of dilution. So the pheomelanin produces tan or red pigment in goat hair, and it's most often affected by a level of dilution and produces a wide variety of tan or red colors. So if you look at like the least dilution, your tan can be so dark and so red that it can almost look black. Some dilution can look red or tan. Further dilution creates a light tan or a gold color, and even maximum dilution creates a cream color that can almost look white, like in this little cutie. So the pheomelanin, when your goat's hair pigment is influenced by the pheomelanin, it can be a wide range of different colors. Now the agouti locus controls which parts of the goat are going to have eumelanic pigment and which parts are going to have pheomelanic pigment on the goat. In the vast swath of all of our goat breeds, there's over 20 agouti patterns identified in goats, but most breeds of goats only have a limited subset of those agouti patterns. And indeed, our San Clemente Island goats really have a very minimal subset. But I'm going to go over some of these because I think it helps understand how the eumelanic and the pheomelanic pigment are distributed on our goats. So if we look at one of the patterns, the most dominant pattern in this whole distribution of agouti locus, it's what's called the white and tan pattern. And with this pattern, the whole goat is your pheomelanic pigment. There's no eumelanic pigment expressed. So these goats will be all light tan, all very red, all very dark red, but there's none of your brown or black coloring from the eumelanic pigment. Another one down the scale, and I'm not going to go through all 20, but just another one a little bit less dominant is black mask. So you can see the eumelanic pigment is showing up in the mask, and the pheomelanic pigment is basically on the whole body of this goat. The bezoar, this is the wild gene. Eumelanic pigment in certain areas, pheomelanic in others. Then our beloved San Clementes, the common pattern that we're used to seeing. Peacock, which is kind of almost the inverse of our San Clementes. And black and tan, which is a lot more dominance of eumelanic pigment to pheomelanic in the goat. And then finally, at the very less dominant and in fact recessive end of this scale is no agouti allele. It's indicated as AAAA. This produces no pattern, and only the eumelanic pigment is visible in the goat. So you can see the two extremes. White and tan, which only shows the pheomelanic, and recessive or no agouti allele, which only shows the eumelanic pigment. Now, within our San Clementes, is anyone else hearing some feedback? Nope? Okay, it's just me then. So within our San Clementes...
I can hear it. Maybe because I'm not on mute.
Okay. So within our... I hope that's not mine. Within our San Clementes, we know that we have the San Clemente allele because that actually was named after our breed. When the San Clementes came off the island, this particular pattern showed up, and the geneticist named the pattern the agouti locus after our breed. So we've got San Clemente alleles in there, and we suspect that we also have a small number of recessive no agouti alleles in a small number of goats. So these are the ones we've been calling self or black, all black goats. What we don't know is what controls the wide variation in pattern expression that we see in San Clemente Island goats. According to the geneticists, all of the different ranges of size of cape and martingales and all that kind of stuff are all still the San Clemente allele. But no one knows why in some goats we have very minimal expression of that pattern, and in some goats we have a very wide expression of that pattern to the point where the whole cape almost covers the whole body of the goat. And right now, we just don't know what controls that. So let's talk about how the agouti pattern applies the eumelanin pigment and pheomelanic pigment on the goat. You can think of the eumelanin as sort of the base color of the goat. So this goat in the picture is black. Its eumelanin pigment is the wild allele, the black on it. Its pheomelanic pigment is tan. And the pattern on it is the San Clemente. What the pattern does is lay the pheomelanic pigment over the goat. So the pheomelanic is going to cover up any eumelanic pigment on the goat. Another way to kind of look at it is if you had a goat that had the white and tan, one copy of the white and tan allele, one copy of the other extreme, the recessive allele, that goat is going to be white and tan because the white and tan is dominant, and it's only going to show pheomelanic pigment. Another example is, let's say you had a goat that had one copy of the San Clemente allele and one copy of the peacock, which is almost an inverse negative of the San Clemente goat. Then your pheomelanic or tan pigment and a eumelanic, and the only dark places on this goat are going to be where the dark overlaps on these two patterns, the San Clemente and the peacock. So the tan or pheomelanic always overlays the eumelanic. Just kind of another way to think of it. Now we have one other modifier that works on our goats, and that's the spotting. Spotting is a dominant allele. So if your goat is dominant for spotting, it's going to show spotting. But sometimes the spotting is so minimal that it's hard to, it's easy to overlook, especially like with frosting. If your goat has frosting, one of its parents has frosting, but because the expression of that frosting can be so small, you might not even notice it, or you might just think, oh, those are a couple gray hairs because it's older. But no, it's a dominant gene, and so its parent has that. So what the spotting does is you've got this goat where it has eumelanic pigment covered over with paleomelanic pigment as defined by its agouti pattern. The spotting covers all of that and basically removes pigment from the goat. It's taking pigment out of those hairs. Now, what we do as far as recording goat color for registration, we have a very limited field in our database, as to what we can use to describe our goats. And it is a limitation. I wish we had more area and we could be more descriptive. But what we ended up doing is deciding it was important to record the paleomelanic pigment. We're calling it shade because we thought calling it tan would confuse people. So we're asking people, tell us if your goat is dark red, dark tan, light tan, or cream in the paleomelanic areas. We're asking to record the pattern, even though both the San Clemente Island pattern and the minimal San Clemente Island pattern are controlled by the same gene so far. There has to be something that's deciding whether you have one expression or the other. So we want to kind of record that and be able to look at the history of goats and parentage and the colors that are being recorded to see if we can find some pattern and maybe discover the gene that is affecting the distribution of that pattern. And then also solid black, which would be the recessive no agouti allele there. And then we've got some catch descriptions for spotting, star, blaze, belt, spots, frost, so that we can record whether the goat had that. We have something like it's 50 characters in the database, so we had to really pare it down as to what we could describe and get it in there and recorded for registration. So that's kind of like the basic overview. I can take questions, I can delve. I pulled up one of the presentations that we had for actually doing the registrations and how you would do that if we wanted to go through that. But maybe I can just cover some of the basic questions on goat coloration and genes right now and then see where we want to go.
On the belt, Lisa, does it need to be, is it just a white area in the belly band area? Does it need to be a certain amount or placement?
I would say just a white band or white coloration in the belly area.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And spots is what I've been telling people to put if they've got like a foot or a leg or, anything else.
Foot, hind leg, butt, something on the neck. Yeah.
The only other confusing things on where we have the color samples shown, like on the website.
Yeah, I can pull that up.
Yeah, if you've got that handy. Like, I don't know, like dark tan, for example, there's a really dark, and then there's what looks light, and so that confuses people a little bit. Is there anything you've got to throw out there to help that be clearer?
Yeah, I don't really. It was hard to try to figure out how we could differentiate these enough, but not so much that then we'd get into the point of, well, I can't quite decide between these two. A lot of it's a judgment call, and some people would look at a dark tan goat and say, well, really, it looks like the cape is fully extended over the whole goat. But you can kind of see certain times of the year, or just after shedding, there's a slight difference. I mean, it's hard because they change over time. They change as they age. They change during the seasons. So it's really, the dark tan is really just recording that it is darker in that area than it's not really red, it's not really light tan, and it's not the cape as, you know, as a black and tan goat might have been.
Okay.
I kind of wonder if there's this, when talking to people about registrations in general too, like having language around that fact that the color can and does change quite a bit, and maybe leaving that up to the new owners or the current owner to keep those kinds of notes, you know, prior, this like really basically encouraging people just to like keep really good notes for themselves and pass it on to new owners or whatever it might be. And yeah, because it is like, I'm like, you know, you can't put your goat up to one of these color cards and be like, this matches it perfectly. But yeah, just encouraging people just to like take that big leap and pick the color.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and encourage people to take pictures and keep them over time, so that you can kind of see the evolution of it. I don't know if we'll ever fully understand how or why these goats change color over time, sometimes really significantly, but at least that gives us some data.
I hope with the online herd book in AKKPS, and they let you upload a photo with your pig's registration. So I'm hoping at some point with our online herd book we'll be able to have photos with our goats' information.
That would be really good. I know that the technology we're looking at allows that because it's the same technology used for the Navajo Churro Sheep Association, and we're required to upload photos in order to register sheep.
Cool.
So hopefully we'll make sure that's part of what we buy from them.
Yeah. Well, and even if we can't do it now for financial reasons, you know, as we get more members and more registrations, maybe we could add it. I don't know how it works.
If you want to see how it works, you can go to the Navajo Churro Sheep Association website and see, look up a breeder will allow you to look up a breeder. You should also be able to look up a sheep, and you could see what that database is going to look like.
Yeah. AKKPS is also the same company.
Is it? Okay.
So that's what Sarah's been referring to and looking at. And I have it on good authority that seems to be coming up soon.
That would be really nice.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Anyone have any other questions about colors?
You know,
I don't.
It's not a question exactly. Oh, go ahead, Christy.
No, I was just going to say I don't think I have anything. You addressed the registration why, so that's good.
It's more of this like a curiosity or a thought and opinion piece. Would you think that over time, as the population keeps growing in the United States, that more particular color variations might pop out? Like it does seem like there's more of the like spotting and blaze and frosting components, but I guess we would have to be able to look at old records and see, but that seems to be popping out more.
I would think so, because people like it, so they're going to breed a goat with a pretty spot or pretty frosting, and it's a dominant trait, so at least 50%, if not 100% of their babies would have it. So that's going to propagate. And then, you know, with some of the other colors that we like, you know, say like the creams, People are breeding those. We don't understand what makes the shade color cream versus dark red, but there's got to be something there, right? So even if it's recessive, you're getting more of those recessive genes out there.
I know I'm going to have to work on my goat ID system because I'm so spoiled to my alpines all looking totally unique, you know, and so I know which goat is what, and I've never had any questions. But now with these SCIs, I'm going to really have to up my collar game or tags or something.
Yeah, I have the same issue. So many of them look alike, and they also love pulling out tags. So
Right.
I've been doing the microchips lately, which is great because I can definitively identify them, but not from a distance.
Right.
And I don't know what to do about that.
I've always kept collars on my alpines, but I just started or stopped disbudding. So this is like my second year with horned goats. So I'm going to have to watch that. But I'm thinking about getting some, they make a little slide-on tag for collars. I'm thinking about getting some of those where I could have their name, you know, on the tag.
Yeah.
Because I reuse collars, you know, years and years I'll use the same collars, but I could just slide the tag off and put another name on it. But I'm thinking about trying that if it doesn't seem like the horns are going to be an issue with the collars.
Are they worried about horns getting caught on the collars?
That's been the concern that has been expressed to me. I haven't been concerned about it, but you know how it is. As soon as you tell somebody, oh, that's not going to happen, then it'll happen. So.
Yeah. I mean, my concern with collars, especially with the San Clementes, is they are vertical goats as much as they are horizontal. And so just reaching up even over a fence, you know, getting something caught.
So far, all my alpines, and they reach, I mean, you know, they're huge, tall, and so they reach up and through and, you know, stick their heads through the fence because they've been disbudded. And so far, their collars, they have the little plastic clip, you know, that clips them together. So far, it seems like it pushes that clip and that they lose their collar along a fence line all the time.
Breakaway.
Yeah, well, I mean, it doesn't really break. It just they basically take it off, you know. and then we find it. My husband comes carrying in a muddy collar, or the dog comes bringing it up. That's when it gets chewed up. But you know, we just slap it back on them. So.
Okay. I mean, that would be pretty safe because even if they got hung up, it would loosen and come off of them. Yeah.
That is something I go through it fast, but I get like bulk plastic chains like that people would use for like security things or whatever, and I cut that accordingly, and then I get the clips that are goat specific, and they're this like plastic chain breakaway collars. And they lose them, but it does allow me to at least have like I can throw a tag on. If I keep up with putting them on, it's like I like to have collars if it's a last ditch resort to grab them or like be able to manage them. But I have like with dog collars, I have seen a number of dumb goat things with them, including they're getting their foot stuck under the collar.
Oh gosh.
Or like getting hung up on another goat's collar, or like another goat's horns. It'll just like they'll like be they're goats. Like I'm stunned just by the amount of like ways they want to kill themselves. But I like the like ultimately I like the chain breakaway collars, but it is like being like, oh, blah blah blah, lost hers again. Better go find that. You know.
Yeah.
Some of them don't. I don't know what they do. They're goats. But...
Yeah.
Yeah, the identification, especially from a distance, is a challenge with these guys.
Yeah.
We've been using those breakaway dog collars with the plastic clips like what Christy's talking about, and we haven't had any bad experiences. We've had goats lose them, just like Christy was talking. But every once in a while we'll hear them screaming because they're caught, with somebody else, but they've always broken away and kept them safe. And that's my cousin told us that that's what she does, and so that's how we got on to doing that. But it has been a good way for us. And then we just know what color each of those are, and our goats, now we're up to 11 of them, but they look different enough that with the collars we can identify them.
Yeah. Now, I think the female's horns are straight enough that, if they do, they're pretty sharp about finagling their horns back out of situations, and I think the girls would be fine to pull their horn back out. Now, a buck, if it's fighting with another one, that might be a different situation. I think Laurel had a buck get tangled up like that, and so I don't know. We'll see.
Actually, I wanted to ask a color piece that probably doesn't have an answer. Would you consider possibly that some of the more uncommon variations, specifically the solid black or like the cream color or white or cream color with the goats, do you think they might represent, like, I'm trying to think about like the island itself before the goats were brought to the mainland, and what could have been represented there, and if those particular animals might represent, I don't know, in a weird way, valuable genetics, or I don't know if that's really what I'm asking, but yeah, is that representation of all of the different colors important, basically?
I think it's important. I mean, it's part of the whole breed, and there were both of those colors, at least visually, on the island. My gut feel is like, and it's just a gut feel, is the cream color seems to be pretty easy to understand as far as its dilution of the pheomelanic pigment. It's in other breeds. It's fairly well understood that it's part of the pheomelanic range, although no one understands what is causing it to be so diluted. I think we have few of them in our gene pool simply because the goats were hunted on the island, and what's more obvious to see than a nice white goat, against the background of the island. So we probably lost a lot of those genes during those years, and they're slowly coming back. The solid black is more of a question in my mind. We still can't say for sure that we have solid black because, how can we say this? We can't say for sure because we don't have a genetic test for it, and it can look like other things. It can be, as Dr. Spangenberg would say, a maximum expression of the San Clemente Island pattern. It potentially, we need to keep records and photos and stuff, it could potentially be the black and tan agouti allele showing up in our goat. Right now we don't think we have that allele in our goat, but it's a really dark, extensive cape that goes across the whole body and the hips, and basically the only thing that has the tan colors is the belly and a couple of places, on the legs and around the eyes. We do know that the Santa Catalina Island goats, which are Clementes came from a long time ago, have different alleles. So I've got a couple Santa Catalina does here, and they don't have the San Clemente pattern. One of them has a black and tan pattern, and the other, I guess I should look and see. I think she's more of a black mask, but I'll have to look at her really carefully. But basically, they had other alleles, so it is possible in theory that we have some hidden alleles in our San Clemente gene pool. So we just have to kind of keep looking at it and record goats that are, looking like solid black and see how they mature, see if any tan color shows up on them, and who their parents were, and kind of keep all those records to try to identify, do we have that recessive in our gene pool or not? Do we have black and tan in our gene pool or not? Do we have some other agouti allele that can be masked by the more dominant San Clemente allele? We just have to kind of keeping records.
Yeah, I have to send you pictures of one of the goats I got from Elizabeth. But yeah, you can definitely see, he's black, but he definitely has that a bit of that dark tan.
Uh-huh.
And of course, the Casimir, you can definitely see that he has a black cape, but he looks that friendly. And that was like my previous self-black buck a long time ago had that same look of having that tint to him. So that is interesting, just to have him pop up with two goats that totally aren't self-black, And I know I talked to you about that, but it'll be really fun to sit down and actually just look back at those records and better understand that piece.
Yeah, and if we could find, there's certain breeds of goats that we could use to test breed, with our San Clementes. So if let's say that you have a boar goat that's black, but neither of its parents are black, then it's a recessive agouti allele. And you could use that doe to breed to some San Clemente Island bucks and see if you've got a recessive allele in one of your bucks. 50% of the babies would be black. We tried to do that with some siphon crosses because it was thought that the siphon cross was a recessive agouti allele, but it turns out we ended up proving that the siphons had the extension gene, which is another gene that's not in our San Clementes, and they were black because of the extension gene. So then they became pretty much useless for trying to do some of this test breeding. So, there's things that we can do when we have the luxury of time and space and feed, and the right goat, that we could say, okay, this goat, we know it has this kind of set of genes, let's do some test breeding, on San Clementes and see what we find.
On the solid black topic, where does that term self-black come from? You've probably said that sometime and I missed it.
I'm not sure where it originally came from. It's used in other breeds to describe the solid black, and then we ended up changing in for our registration. We call it solid black because I guess some people thought it would be confusing. But it's just a solid black animal. There's, in general, if I extend beyond San Clemente's a little bit, there's two ways a goat could be solid black. One is to have the two recessive agouti alleles, meaning there's no agouti pattern in the goat at all. Then it's going to be just the eumelanin pigment, which could be either black or brown, right? So this could be applied to a brown goat, but if it's a black goat, then it's just going to be solid black. The other way a goat can be solid black is if it has the extension gene, and the extension gene says, yeah, you might have some agouti pattern allele, but the extension gene covers over that and says, nah, I'm not going to let any of the pheomelanic pigment come through. So it's just eumelanic pigment. And the extension gene is a dominant gene. So if you've got a goat or a sheep that has the extension gene, let's say it has one copy of it, then 50% of its babies are going to be solid. If it has two copies, all of its babies are going to be solid. I run into this with one of my breeding rams who had the extension gene, and what we figured out was he had the extension gene, he was black in his eumelanic pigment, and he also had the white and tan agouti allele. But because of the extension gene, he was black, and because he has one copy of the extension gene, precisely 50% of his lambs were black and 50% were white because of the white and tan agouti allele. And so you can, and we had over 200 lambs born that year, and it was a 50-50, like precisely 50-50. So that was pretty definitive statistic proof that he had one copy of the extension gene, at least one of the white and tan, and was black at the Atlantic area. And we can eventually do some of that stuff with the San Clemente Island goats if we find the right other partner to breed to.
Hi, so I have a question. So, not necessarily with the coloring, because I think I figured out the coloring of it, but with mine being rescues and I have not figured out where they've come from, would it be, like, would DNA testing be worth it with my 3, or would that just be a waste?
Right now, I wouldn't do it because the way the DNA testing works is you'd have to say, I believe this is the mom and I believe this is the dad, and then the DNA testing would tell you yes or no. There's no way to just turn in the DNA and say who is the mom and dad. So it wouldn't be worth it for you. Now, one of the things that we're trying to do, if we do develop this relationship with Neogen, which we're trying desperately to get finalized, but it's not finalized yet, is they will allow us to download the data, 70,000 markers off of each goat that gets DNA tested. And while it may not come to the point where you could just put in your goat's DNA and say who's my daddy, we may be able to identify enough common markers in San Clemente's in general to develop what we've been calling a purity test, which means you don't know who the mom is, you don't know who the dad is, but it meets the purity test for being a San Clemente Island goat, right? We'd like to have one of those. We don't right now. We need to get a good database of records that we can then work with either with an AI tool or some university to try to see if we can identify enough markers to say this is a San Clemente Island goat.
Okay, thanks.
You did not get a date yet, right, Lisa, on that Neogen meeting?
No, he couldn't do Thursday, Friday, so we're going to try for next week.
Okay.
And today I've just been heads down on a bunch of other things, so I couldn't try to sift through that. But we'll get there eventually. I'm pleased that they have a proposal to bring back to us. Hopefully it's what we need.
I wanted to mention to Tiffany, and I'm sure you've probably done a lot of researching already, and you've likely connected with Christy, but is there any help that other people could give to help you search for the original home place of the goats?
So I've been reaching out. I've been like stalking people's, I guess not stalking because that's illegal, but I've been like sleuthing people's pictures and be like, hey, you have stripes like my goat, or you have this like my goat. Would you happen to know any information if you've like sold any? Because the rescue, when they picked them up, it was a very sketchy, they didn't really feel super safe. So they were not trying to like stay around and get the entire history. They were really just trying to get the goats out of there before a confrontation happened. And so the people just kept saying, oh, these are San Clemente Island goats. These are San Clemente Island goats. And we got them. They thought they said Virginia, but I'm not 100%. They're not 100% sure that that's like right, because it was just such a like hostile situation. And so I'm just kind of going through and being like, does any breeder, just kind of going through it. The names we got were the names that the rescue got from the original owner or from the owners, but who knows if they like what they got them from, you know?
Yeah, and unfortunately, because of the pattern, a lot of people look at it and say, "Oh, that's a San Clemente," but that pattern now appears in Nigerians and other breeds, and so it's hard to say for sure.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate. There's been other circumstances like that over the years too. But all you can do is just keep on going out and asking, you know, and trying to sleuth a little bit as well. So.
Yeah, I have hold on. I have someone's I'm really horrible with names, so I have Jules.
Yeah.
She has some of her pictures on Facebook. My goats look very similar to. So, but she said she didn't have anything, so I was gonna give her a call this week to see if she can help out or have any ideas, and kind of go from there.
Does anyone else have any questions?
I think I'm good. We appreciate this, Lisa.
Hey, my pleasure.
I was gonna say, Lisa, like you explaining everything makes everything click in my head much better. I really appreciate this. This helps a ton.
Oh, good.
Somewhere on YouTube, there's a video of Lisa going over color that I found really helpful when I first joined, and I refer back to it when I can find it. I've got it bookmarked somewhere now, but it was very, very helpful. It takes me about 4 or 5 times hearing things over and over for it to sink in. So that's a good one to bookmark. Maybe we can link it in the event page or something.
Okay. Yeah, and there's also, as you know, this quick reference guide, and then also there's the color white paper, which goes into more detail, and it has pictures and things. I think the white paper is listed on the SAIGBA website.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot on that website, though, that it's just overwhelmed, you know, and so the part of the quick cheat sheet is what I usually send people that are filling out papers, and then I refer also to your video that you did. Hello, Aaron. Did you get your supper?
Yes. I was just going to say that I can put links to some of the papers that Lisa's talking about in the YouTube channel when I post this video.
Yeah, that'd be good.
So, Lisa.
And maybe also on the event.
Yeah. So, and I'll just post a link to that video too, just so that people can see it. I know I've had a couple of people ask if it was going to be recorded. So, Lisa, we really appreciate you taking the time to do this and work.
Hey, my pleasure.